strength to guide our nation along the path that will make America great again. Let us go forth now with these words of President Trump's emblazoned on our hearts. As long as we have pride in our beliefs, courage in our convictions, and faith in our God, then we will not fail. We stand tall, we stand proud, because we are Americans, and Americans kneel to God, and to God alone. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for our national anthem.
Can you say, o'er the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose the stars and bright stars o'er the perilous light, o'er the ramparts wayward were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket eagerly heaven's plastic banner gave proof to the night that our flag was still there. Oh, sailors at Carthago,
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
And there we just had the national anthem by Christopher and the new president of the United
please remain
States.
at your seats while the president and official party depart the platform.
And this is now where President Biden is escorted by the new president of the United States. And President Biden will depart along with some members of his family to California and Santa Ynez for a vacation out there with his family. The president's inaugural address, he promised a golden age in which he said a revolution of common sense, in which he promised a bunch of new changes. And I think later today at Capital One Arena, if not in the next hour or so, we will see him sign what has been described as a blizzard of executive orders and actions on everything from the border to energy to also government efficiency and issues about gender and more.
Yeah, in the spirit of getting right to it in his second term, the president kind of skipped the inaugural address and jumped right to the State of the Union, listing the promises and plans, which were ambitious, disruptive, and every inch what he was elected by his supporters, his core supporters, to do. But like a State of the Union, you know, the proof will be in the pudding, the proof will be in the doing. We also have the experience of the first administration and the infrastructure bill, which was much discussed and never came. As a tonal matter, we've been talking a lot about this day, which has a kind of special grace that hovers over it. Political grudges are paused. Donald Trump benefited from that grace in the ceremony, but as is often the case, he did not feel obliged to extend the same grace or ceremony. He talked at some length about the horrible betrayal of the president who was sitting right over his shoulder. And so the question is, as we've seen before, does he enjoy the benefits of the office, but not the obligations? And I should note one other thing. He took an oath today. He's the only person ever to take the presidential oath who has been accused by the leaders of his party in the House, the Senate, and his own vice president of actively working to overthrow an election and therefore break with that oath. So
what does that mean?
Well, you make an oath to the Constitution, and the Constitution says there will be a free and peaceful transfer of power. In working to overthrow the election, he sought to thwart the peaceful transfer of power and undo the $81 million votes. Mitch McConnell, the leader in the Senate, Kevin McCarthy, the leader in the House, and his vice president all said he broke with that oath. Well, he's taken the oath again. Same promise has been made again. No one in American history.
McCarthy said it too at the time. I think that's why so many people struggle. I think you always hear from the country they want to be united. You know, he goes to the Biden White House. They have lunch of crab cakes and ribeye steak and Thumbelina carrots. And then he comes out and insults Joe Biden while he's sitting there. He did the same thing with the Barack Obama.
The lunches that are coming up. Not
the
lunches coming up. We're going to have that. Yeah.
No, but I'm talking about, I'm just going through the course of the day, the tea that they had, which turned out to be a lunch. You keep hearing people say, I would like the country to be united. And, you know, when you talk to people, he starts right away saying the golden age of America begins now. I did like that he acknowledged that it was Martin Luther King Day, and that under his leadership, Martin Luther King's dream is going to come true. Well, I'm curious about which dream exactly he's talking about, because he proceeded to say America's decline is over. We're going to reclaim the public. He was saved by God to make America great again. Listen, the American people spoke. He won. He won the electoral vote. He won all the swing states. Everybody understands that. But now we're at the point where I think people are saying, how are you going to unite us? And if I'm sitting there as someone who, and I'm sitting there as a Democrat, or if you didn't vote for Trump, where do I fit into this conversation? I think many people are wondering that. People at this point, guys, I believe, just really want to be united. We know that he won. Everyone, I think, has accepted that Donald Trump won this race fair and square.
A jubilant moment for the Trump family as their father is returned to office. I want to bring in historian Douglas Brinkley. Douglas?
Yeah, well, you know, I think it was really the speech about the
Hey, these some strange looking people, y'all. They some weirdos.
step to manifest destiny in the settling of the West, that God had ordained it, claiming that we're going to grab, and I think this is a newsbreaker, he is saying we're going to take back the Panama Canal.
Can y'all hear me? Is that Elon?
Roosevelt built it, and it's ours, and China's controlling it.
They look like they
you know,
trying to fit in
straight on through, American exception. MAGA is American exceptionalism on steroids. But look how we've changed as a society. Of the days of Me Too movement and Black Lives Matter, climate activism, you know, it's just gone. And there's a void that President Biden's left that no Democrat right now is able to fill. Nancy Pelosi not being there, Michelle Obama, AOC not there. You're feeling there's a little bit of a void, but the speech was, I think, better than his first in the sense that the tone of it hung together well, and it is just, though, not really a unifying speech, but it masqueraded as one.
Donald Trump is now the president of the United States, and President Biden is set to leave from the east front of the Capitol shortly. And Robert Costa, because we're going to be spending so much of the next 4 years talking about Donald Trump, perhaps a moment to talk about how Joe Biden sees these final moments and his legacy.
Nora, I was with President Biden in the White House residence in August, and he takes pride in his record, what he has done to navigate Russia's war with Ukraine, massive spending on domestic policy.
They shouldn't be knowing
and he believes he has been a protector.
They watch their parents do shit, but they can't talk about it. It's the norm for them. I missed that speech. I didn't come in on that part. It probably was a good speech. I don't doubt that.
The tax code. Republican majorities, albeit paper thin in the House and in the Senate, pursuing a major package on the border along with tax reform, a total upending of many agencies and departments across the federal government, and a scaling back of the size of the federal government. You see the Trump family there. But this was a speech of action, and he explicitly detailed what he is going to do. And for people who haven't been paying attention to the campaign or to the transition, this was Trump underscoring, I mean business. Policy changes are coming, and they will be sweeping.
And I just want to note that Hillary Clinton there and President Bill Clinton there are shaking every member of the Trump's family, despite the things that they have said about her. And I think it was, I'm told by people close to the Clintons, it was very important for them to not only show up, but to show the sort of graciousness that normally accompanies former presidents, and to make sure that they publicly support this peaceful transition of power. There is some news at this moment about those last-minute pardons by President Biden. So I want to bring in our senior White House correspondent, Ed O'Keefe. And Ed, we're watching lawmakers right now, Democratic lawmakers and others set to see President Biden off. What have you learned about those pardons?
Nora, it is not hyperbole to say that as the now former president was taking the stage in the rotunda, his White House was sending out word that he had issued more preemptive pardons, this time to 3 people and their spouses who've been with him his entire political career. His siblings, James, Valerie, and Frank Biden, and their spouses, saying in part that amid all the talk about political retribution, he felt it necessary to do this despite his respect for the rule of law. In the remaining moments of the Biden presidency, phone calls made by CBS News to try to figure out why he did this. And one source familiar with the decision tells me the outgoing president made it to pardon his siblings and their spouses just in the last few days, amid the, quote, continuing talk and concern about possible prosecution and persecution by the new administration. The source said there was no specific recent action or statement by the now president that prompted Biden's decision, and the source didn't know whether the former president's siblings requested the pardon. All 3 of them have been active in the now former president's political career. James Biden was his fundraiser in his first campaign. His sister Valerie famously was the campaign manager, and then of course helped raise Hunter and Beau Biden after their mother died. Frank Biden, who served in the Clinton administration, all of them in one way or another have worked in lobbying or influence peddling in the last several decades. And there had been talk, of course, over the course of this most recent campaign, that the Biden family, or as Trump and his associates called it, the Biden crime family, should face consequences for their alleged actions, none of which in any real way has ever panned out. He, of course, also preemptively pardoned his son Hunter, and we should point out, issued thousands of pardons or commutations to everyday Americans who had been seeking legal relief from the White House over the last several years. Biden will leave office having granted more of them than anyone else. But this 53-year political career now ending as he prepares to take the East Front walk, get on the helicopter, head to Joint Base Andrews for a final goodbye. Notable, he did not walk down the steps of the East Front. Remember, amid all the concerns about whether he can ascend staircases, especially in this tough weather, notable that he did not do that. Nora?
And it should be noted, too, the ages of both of these presidents.
True.
Donald Trump, 78 years old, now becomes the oldest president elected at age 78 and will serve into his 80s as well as Joe Biden, who is now 82 years old, just having had his birthday in November. And he will now join what is now Special Air Mission 46. It's only called Marine One when the President of the United States is on it for that final flyover of our majestic United States Capitol to see those final moments. And while there has been much accomplished in the Biden administration, even though the American people did not view that so, there were 17 million jobs created certainly digging the country out of massive inflation that some say he helped with some of his big spending programs. There is much that those within the Biden circle hope that the long lens of history will show that he has achieved more than people give him credit for.
In one of his last interviews, Nora, he was saying he should have done a better job on messaging, letting people know all of the things that he had done and that he accomplished.
Every president says that. It's a kind of standard button they push. And, you know, that some of that might be true if every voter had metaphysical certainty about the things done in your White House. But also, it's very true in American politics and very hard that when the economy is against you, you can't talk your way around that.
And there was always 2/3 of the country thought we were heading in the wrong direction. But to Gail's point, too, I do think that the Biden administration suffered from an ability to communicate their achievements, not only from the principal level, but also from the staff level.
So what will he do now? We hear he's going to California. What will he do now?
Delaware has always been home for former President Biden, and he will return to Delaware. Loves Rehoboth Beach. It's a place where he made that decision to exit the presidential race. He'll also spend time in Wilmington, I'm told. He has a lot of connections in Philadelphia nearby. Family lives in the Philadelphia area. So he'll be in and around Delaware and Philadelphia, and will surely make his way from time to time back to Washington, D.C. What a political life for President Biden. And people close to both President Trump and President Biden have told me that these two men share a lot more in common than might be fully understood. They have both been on the public stage since the 1970s. They have been through ups and downs. They are at their core political survivors. And that led, I'm told, to a relatively friendly Oval Office meeting when they met in private. There's an understanding that they have both endured, even if they both disagree with each other.
And that we're just witnessing as the former Vice President Kamala Harris's motorcade just left. And we are already getting a sense of how things are changing here in Washington and around the world. Margaret Brennan, I know you have some new reporting.
Sure, and a historic departure for the first female vice president of the United States, Nora. In terms of what's changing,
the wind about to blow Joe ass over, ain't it?
Galvez is confirming through
His
Homeland
wife,
Security
Jill wasn't
officials
holding his
that
hand, he'd have
all of
to
the
move
appointments
away.
that had been scheduled for interviews for asylum seekers, those seeking to enter the United States legally through this app that was created by the Biden administration to slow the crowds at the border and get them in through appointments called CBP1. That's already been just totally taken offline. So 30,000 appointments that had been scheduled for migrants to go through and have it actual legal process gone already. We are seeing changes in these executive orders that could actually create some questions about how does one legally enter if legal pathways are being shut down. This is something, Nora, that came up at the debate, if you remember, that you and I had with the vice presidential candidates. A campaign promise, once again, to do away with some of these things that the Biden administration put in place to deal with what has been a historic hemisphere-wide migration crisis with a crush of humanity unseen since World War II.
So, Margaret, are you saying people that want to enter the country legally can now have lost an avenue to do that? Is that what you're saying? Effective now?
Well, in the view of the Trump administration, they believe that the Biden administration's interpretation of the law was not legal, but they had created this pathway under their interpretation of regulations.
Yes, Senator Blunt.
Well, the traditional avenue for asylum was to go to any American embassy, American consulate, ask for asylum there. This idea that you can come to the border, say, I qualify for asylum and get in is very new. And there's a reason that we're walking away from that. It doesn't work. There's also a reason that in every European country with their border problems, that's been a huge issue in every election now for a decade. And we have to do something differently than we're doing. What we're doing is not working.
No, great point in terms of not just the hemisphere-wide migration crisis, but it's really worldwide. You see it through Middle East, through Africa, moving into Europe. But in terms of the processing in this day and age, the poverty that exists for some people prevents traveling to the capital to go to an embassy. Their workaround was create that app on your phone.
Well, yeah, but living in a
poorest.
poor or dangerous country is not a reason for asylum. You have to personally have some unique fear. People all over the world will come to the United States if there's a way to get here for good reason. but you can't let we're the most open country in the world on asylum. And we have made a joke out of the asylum process by what we've been doing at the border.
And that would need to change through law, or what was just announced in executive order by Donald Trump.
It's a full conversation to have. Yes, it's a full conversation to have about the process and failures of the immigration system that have largely been the product of the United States Congress's failure to get something done for decades, even though multiple presidents, Republican and Democrat, have tried valiantly to do that indeed. And now we see a helicopter known as Marine One, and the president is in it. It's now Special Air Mission 47 departing, Special Mission 46 departing the east front of the Capitol as Joe Biden leaves Washington for the final time, ending a half-century career as a public servant. I want to bring in Scott McFarland.
She said a half-century career as a public servant.
Standing in the footprint of this helicopter about to take off on the east front of the Capitol. It really is quite a closing chapter to the peaceful transfer of power. It was 4 years ago where the rioters first fought with police in this very spot, disrupting the peaceful transfer of power in 2021. It has been secured here today with President-elect Trump, now President Trump, side by side with President Biden. Watching President Biden board the helicopter for this aerial liftoff, this one-of-a-kind American image and moment on the east front of the Capitol. If you can still hear me, there are police and fire EMS workers surrounding this area taking pictures on their phones. And it feels something akin to a severe thunderstorm or small tornado in wind strength. The metaphor of a change in Washington.
I can't remember the year that I was there in that exact same position. And just to think about it, just to think about how President Biden feels at this moment.
That's what I was wondering, Laura. And I wonder, do we know who else is on the helicopter, if anybody? Who else is on it with him? Do we know?
Dr. Biden.
He's about to pass by the old home place, too.
Yeah, besides Jill and Joe Biden, do we know who else could possibly be on that chopper? Because normally it's not just the two of them.
He's going to look down at his old house.
Yeah. I wonder what he's feeling and thinking, too, at this moment.
To fly down the Washington Mall, past the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, the White House, and then on to Andrews Air Force Base, where I imagine he'll be greeted by other members of his family for that trip out to California and a vacation for the 82-year-old president. Want to bring in Democratic strategist Joel Payne. And Joel, while 49.8% of the country that voted for Donald Trump elated today, winning a popular vote about what's next, there are a number of people who voted for the Democratic candidate and voted for Joe Biden who are expressing sadness today and thinking about this presidency. What happened?
What happened is a big, broad question, Nora, and good to be with you all. I think what happened is Democrats fundamentally lost two discussions with the American people. One was the disruption and the norm busting of Trump. Was that disqualifying? And also, was the return to normalcy that Biden promised and attempted to deliver, was that good enough? And I think Democrats lost the public discussion on both of those points, unfortunately, for us politically. And I think when you have a public that is very rambunctious and angry and is disappointed and has felt like government and lots of institutions have failed them for years and years and years, you arrive at a point today where Donald Trump can ride grievance back into the White House. And I think that's what we're witnessing with this inauguration. That's what we're witnessing with the messaging he's leading with. And I think that's what Democrats will have to face for the next 4 years.
Bob, I know that you said that he laid out an action plan. It was a plan of action. Can you lay out a plan of action and still just let go of the grievances? Is that not, did it feel like a grievance speech to you or no?
The grievances of President Trump certainly, Gail, coursed throughout the remarks today. But what's so clear to me, based on my reporting on his inner circle, my conversations with the president, is that he truly believes, and you could argue it, that he has a mandate and that Washington has accepted his mandate by giving him Republican majorities. And he believes that his critics, wherever they might be, will be relatively muted in the years to come.
And we're about to hear from President Donald Trump address Emancipation Hall, but I want to head first to Weijia Jiang at the White House, who has some new reporting about the new Trump team that's already there at the White House and at work. Weijia.
Nora, that's right. As all of this was unfolding at the Capitol, of course, there has to be a physical transition of power as well. And so by the busloads, 3 busloads, in fact, new incoming administration officials were brought over here to the White House from the Capitol. We also know that a van of national security staff drove onto the White House campus before noon, and they went right into the Situation Room, according to aides who told CBS that they got right to work. We also took note that right at the strike of noon, if you clicked on the White House website, the government website, viewers could see a video of President Trump, a montage of him doing various things throughout the country. There was already posted several of their priorities. There was a space for executive orders, which will be filled once he begins signing them. And of course, there is the physical move of stuff as well. There are moving trucks behind us. We were wandering through the West Wing, and we could see people bringing things in and out. And we saw some of the last staffers from the Biden administration here as well, including the press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre. So this was a very smooth transition so far physically, and we expect those staffers to come in throughout the day to be with President Trump. Nora?
All right, Weijia Jiang, thank you. We're listening now to Speaker Mike Johnson, who is in Emancipation Hall. Let's listen in for a moment.
With hundreds of thousands of our closest friends, but our disappointment is well overcome with our excitement for the future that we feel today. We have the chance to make the next 4 years the most consequential period in our nation's history. And as Speaker of the House, it is my great pleasure, my great honor, to introduce to you the man who will lead us to this new golden age, the decisive winner of the Electoral College and the popular vote, the 45th and the 47th, and the greatest president of our lifetimes, Donald J. Trump.
And we're expecting another set of remarks from President Donald Trump because there is a huge overflow crowd. Let's bring in Nancy Cordes, who is there in Emancipation Hall. Nancy?
That's right, Nora. Emancipation Hall today serving as a very elegant overflow room, about 1,300 seats that have been set up here for people who would have had a bird's eye view had this event been held outside, but instead watch the events unfold on the big screen here in the room. It's a very partisan crowd. We have glimpsed Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. We have seen Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia in here. The crowd applauded throughout the president's inaugural address as if they were in the same room that he was in. And interestingly, Nora, a few minutes ago, when we saw Special Air Mission 46 lift off, there was a big round of applause about that as well.
All right. Nancy Cordes there, and just remarking about the number of governors that are there in Emancipation Hall, applauding as the President of the United States and the Vice President there gather with many of their supporters. And looks like we're going to hear from the Vice President.
Being here, and was that a hell of a speech or what? That was, man. That was a good way to start it off. You know, I didn't know exactly what the president would put in that speech, and I hoped to myself that he wasn't going to hold back, and sir, you didn't hold back. That was a hell of a way to start the next 4 years. But I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, and I know I speak for the president and for all of us, thank you for making this possible. We love you. We wouldn't be here without you, and we're going to make America great again together for the next 4 years. And the last thing I'll say is, you know, having stood outside for about 5 minutes to wave goodbye to the Bidens, thank God we moved that thing indoors, because it was a beautiful ceremony and it was cold as hell outside. So, sir, the 45th and 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
No, he's right. I said, oh, look at this beautiful sunny day. We blew it. And then I went outside and we were freezing. You would have been very unhappy. The sun was very deceptive, I will tell you. It is cold out. And I'm sort of saying, you know, that was so beautiful today. Maybe they should do it there every 4 years. Does that make sense? I don't know. Because, you know, the outdoor thing is really good, but it gets a little cold around this time of the year, as some people have noticed. And a lot of times they suffer through it. There was no suffering in that room. It was 72 degrees. It was perfect with the best acoustics I think I've ever heard in a room. This is not so bad either. But I just want to say, you're a younger, far more beautiful audience that I just spoke to. And I want to keep it off the record. I want to keep that off the record, because I don't want to have all those big shots up there. I don't want to think you're more powerful than them. You look better than them, and I love you. Now, we just had a great time. We just had a great day. This was amazing. You know, when you think we took a journey, I mentioned in the speech, a lot of people said that was not a journey that was possible, and it was indeed possible. I didn't really know too much about what they were saying when they said that, but a lot of people felt it. And we hooked up with JD very early. I watched JD over a period of time. I endorsed him in Ohio. He was a great senator, and very, very smart. The only one smarter than him was his wife. That was, I would have chosen her, but somehow the line of succession didn't work that way, right? But now she's great and he's great. This is a great, beautiful couple, and unbelievable career. I just said to him, you are very upwardly mobile, because he hasn't been doing it that long, but he picked it up so quickly. Remember, the first week was a little bit like the fake news was hitting him really hard. And I said, oh, this may be tough, but after that, it was smooth sailing for him. He took on everybody. He took on the meanest. I don't want to use the word corrupt because we're into a new system, so let's wait till the corruption begins, because it will. But he took on some pretty mean people, and he handled it well. I want to also congratulate Mike Johnson for the job that he's doing. See, we gave him a majority of almost nothing. And then I said, to make it tougher on him, let me take 2 or 3 of the people, right? I said, he'll only have to suffer with that for about 3 months. How are they doing, by the way? Are they, is that moving along?
Totally unified.
I said, do you mind if I take this one, that one, and a couple of others? He didn't mind. He can handle it. No, he's a man that's liked by everybody. I've never met a man like this. You've got how many is it, 219 or 220 or something? 220. And of the 220, 219 really like him. I noticed he got 1 negative vote once about 2 weeks ago. But I think even 220 like him, if you want to know the truth. And that's very unusual. I know a lot of nice guys in Congress, and they have 35 people that hate him. So if you have 35 people that hate you and you only have 1 or 2 or 3 votes, you'll have 5, I think. But that's going to be like, you know, the good news is when we get to that 5 number, it's going to feel like a massive majority. You could be really nasty to a couple of them at least. You know? So it's going to feel like hitting your head on the wall and stopping. It feels so good to stop. But he's done a fantastic job. And Steve Scalise he's our hero, because, you know, I was with him. You talk about being shot. I was with him. He got some bad ones, and his incredible wife, and she really loves him. You know, you never know about that. I've been with other people that were doing poorly, and the wife is like looking at a watch. She can't get out of the hospital fast enough. How's he doing? I don't know. He's all right. That woman was a mess. She was crying and crying. No, they're going to take him. They're going to take him. I told Steve when he finally woke up, it was a while too. The doctor told me it was the most blood they've ever transfused in any patient. They've never done anything like it. And here he is, the picture of strength, right? And he's been a great friend of mine, right? With a family, because of a family. And what a job you did. It worked out pretty much better than we even thought, right? And I did have a couple of things, to say that were extremely controversial. And between JD and Melania and anybody else that heard, please, sir, it's such a beautiful unifying speech. Please, sir, don't say these things. I said, I'm telling you, it's going to play great. They say, you're right. For this group of people, it's going to play great. You're the only ones I hurt by not, but we had some beauties, didn't we, Melania? She said, sir, calls me sir when she's angry. No, I'm only kidding. I better say I'm only kidding, or the press is going to pick that one up loud and clear. No, but she said, no, I think it would be terrible. It's such a nice speech. I think it's, it all depends on your delivery. How was the delivery? Was it good? But she said it's such a beautiful speech. You can't put things in there that you were going to put in. And I was going to talk about the J6 hostages, but you'll be happy because, it's action, not words that count. And you're going to see a lot of action on the J6 hostages. See a lot of action. And I was going to talk about the things that Joe did today with the pardons of people that were very, very guilty of very bad crimes, like the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs, where they literally, what they did is they destroyed and deleted all of the information, all of the hearings, practically not a thing left. They deleted all the information on Nancy Pelosi having turned down the offer of 10,000 soldiers. You wouldn't have needed 10,000. You could have had 500, and it would have stopped. Because we may have had 1 million people that day, the people that were there. You don't see any photographs, but we have a lot of great photos. But you don't see those photographs. They don't put them in to show the people at the Capitol. But I was talking about that. I was going to talk about that. They said, please don't bring that up right now. You can bring it up tomorrow. I said, how about now in front of I'll bring it up right now. This little time delay is good because we're getting great reviews on the speech. Now watch, they'll take the speech and say, I didn't like it because he left there and he's talked to people, but we're giving you a little more information than we gave upstairs. But no, they pardoned a lot of people. They pardoned, before we even get to today, they pardoned, 33 murderers, absolute murderers, the worst murderers. When you get the death sentence in the United States, you have to be bad, because they don't give it much. And he pardoned almost everybody having a death sentence. And if you went through the crimes that were committed, you wouldn't even believe them. The level of violence, the people that were killed, the innocence of people that were killed, and children killed by these people. And he pardoned them for whatever reason. He spared them, but they didn't spare the people that they killed. And who knows what happens in the future. It's one of the worst because a lot of times they let them out early after that. They say you're going to be in for life, but then all of a sudden they get let out for good behavior, and then they go on a rampage. It's one of those little things, right? But I was going to talk about that. But I was really going to talk about the level of, what's going on. Why are we doing this? Why are we trying to help a guy like Milley? Why are we doing Milley? He was pardoned. What he said, terrible what he said. Why are we helping some of the people? Why are we helping Liz Cheney? Liz Cheney is a disaster. She's a crying lunatic and crying Adam Kinzinger. He's a super crying. I never saw the guy not crying. He's always crying. I looked at him. I remember years ago, he was actually on my side. And then one day, when you don't want to kill people in wars, they turn against you. Liz Cheney hated the concept of not going to war with everybody. Let's kill everybody. Let's spend a lot of money on military equipment. you know, where her father works, right? And, but what she did was incredible. Think of it. They destroyed and deleted all of that information that went on for almost 2 years against Trump. And the reason they did, because it was all false. Like the person that said, I tried to strangle a Secret Service agent. That's one of the toughest human beings I think I've ever seen. I actually had a friend saying, please don't change that, sir. You are the coolest sucker in history. Remember, she said, I put my hands around his neck because he wouldn't go to the Capitol. Made up fiction. And I was rebuffed. And the guy on the right is a massive weightlifter, probably stronger than me. Do you think he's stronger than me, honey? You know who I'm talking about. Possibly stronger than me. Slightly younger than me, like, I won't say how many years because I don't want to talk about that, but a lot of years. But I had a friend that said, why are you disputing that story? That's the coolest story I've ever heard. That I would attack a karate champion, get slightly rebuffed, and then throw my arms around a guy with a neck about this big. Even though there are bars, you know, there are bars, you can't really do that anyway. So I wanted to talk about that. But all of that stuff got deleted. And the reason it got deleted is they were all caught in lies. You know, Secret Service testified and they said it didn't happen. Actually, the two guys were very embarrassed. They're suffering because their friends are saying, did Trump really do that to you? But they gained a whole new respect for me. But it was just make-believe stuff. And there were a lot of make-believe stories made up. So rather than suffer the wrath, like the story with Nancy Pelosi, I offered her 10,000 soldiers. She knows it. She admitted it on tape that her daughter made. She's a videographer or whatever you call her, which I'm glad she is. Oh, she can't be in good stead with Nancy. But Nancy said it was my responsibility as she's leaving the Capitol. She said it was, and it was. She's in charge of security at the Capitol. But I offered them up to 10,000 soldiers, even more. One time I said more, as many as you need, but you needed 400 or 500. If 4 or 5, you 10,000, that'd be more than the number of people there by lot. But we offered her 10,000. Think of it, 10,000 soldiers. In other words, J6 wouldn't be J6. There would have been no J6. But she rebuffed them. She didn't like it. No, she didn't like it. Maybe she wanted that to happen, but she's guilty as hell. And now we would have to go through the process because they destroyed all evidence. They deleted everything. There's virtually nothing left. The other fake story and so many other fake stories. And many people came out on our side, and those people now would got to find them. There's nothing left. So that's a criminal offense. If that were a civil case, it would be a criminal offense. If that happened civilly where you did that, it would be a criminal offense. So I decided I'm not going to make this speech complicated. I'm going to make it beautiful. I'm going to make it a unifying speech. And then when they said we have a group of people that are serious Trump fans, I said, this is the time to tell those stories. He knows. So anyway, but seriously, I'd like to, I think it was a tremendous success. I think we're very lucky we put it inside because it is really cold. We just went to the helicopter out of respect to something that's taken place for a long time. I guess it's as old as helicopters. You used to get into a stagecoach, now you get into a helicopter. Times change. But it's pretty old custom. And it's a beautiful custom, actually. It's a beautiful custom. I wish we could have had a better relationship. I wish we could have had a better relationship between Republicans and Democrats. I was with Senator Schumer. I said, Chuck, I think it's time we all start getting along a little bit because it doesn't make sense. I mean, we literally never get a Democrat vote. They never get a Republican vote, almost. And although there is a bill coming up very shortly that we have a lot of Democrat votes, right? It's going to be a very beautiful bill. We're going to have a deciding, I would say, within a week or so, I think. And it's going to be a very good bill. You all know what I'm talking about. So I just want to thank you all for being here. You have been our fans from day one. All these people all over. You've been our fans. This has been this has been there's never been anything like it. There's never been anything like it. This has been a movement like no movement ever in history for probably any country, let alone this country. You know, if somebody's running for president and if they go out and they announce they're going to Arizona, they're going to Nevada, they're going to someplace, if you have 200 or 300 people, that would be standard. Ronald Reagan would go out. I mean, outside of the last couple of days where people get a little excited, but even then you have a couple of thousand people. But if you're going to go someplace, any place, any one of the swing states, any one of the other states, I mean, we won by numbers that are, nobody's ever seen numbers like that. And, you know, places like California, we did great, but when they send out like 38 million ballots, and nobody knows where the hell they're sending them, and then they come pouring back, the whole thing. You know, they passed a law in California that if you work in an election bureau and if you so much as ask for a voter ID, if you say, sir, ma'am, could I please look at your voter ID? They have the right to put you in jail. You're a criminal. Can you believe that? There's only one reason that happens. They want to cheat. So they had it where voter ID wasn't accepted. But now if you even ask for it, this is seriously a bill that was just signed. It passed in their legislature, and it was signed. And I think when we get things cleaned up and we get back to a little bit of normalcy, I'm going to ask the speaker to really get involved, because I think we would have won the state of California, because, you know, if you look at my numbers with Hispanic, we're at 56%. And we were winning. We won the Texas border that had never been won. As the governor said, he's doing a good job, the governor, by the way, of Texas. But as the governor said, it hasn't. Oh, did I get lucky? Did I get lucky? Supposing I said, you know, he's not here, but the governor of Texas has done a terrible job. Wow, look at you. You mean we couldn't get you up in the front row? I tell you. Supposing I said, JD, the governor of Texas, is not doing his job. You heard what I said. See, I didn't know you were there. I said he's doing a great job. He's doing a phenomenal job. But now you're going to have a partner that's going to work with you, because you didn't have, not only did he have a partner, he had people selling the wall, right? We have a fence structure that we worked on, the governor worked on with me. And I didn't love it, to be honest with you. I wanted a nice precast concrete, you know, 40, 50 feet high, like a beautiful, could have been a T-shape, Y-shape. I love construction. I wanted that sucker to go up maybe 50, 60 feet. It would have looked beautiful, a nice Y shape. And they said, the problem is, sir, they climbed that like a rabbit. I said, what do you mean? No way. And they brought some of these guys out. They climbed it like. And the other thing is you hit it with acid and the thing will disintegrate. You know, they have things for concrete. So they needed very hardened steel, very special steel. And then they needed 7,000-pound concrete inside that steel, inside that steel. And then they have a rebar that's the toughest steel made, very hard to cut. So this is why very little is cut. I mean, it's right. And then they put a anti-climb panel on top. I hated it. I said, it's so unattractive. And I said, why would that work? I don't believe it works. And I went to watch the Border Patrol, gave a display. We had actually two sets of climbers. The guys that climb up walls with drugs on their back, I mean, they got like 60, 70 pounds of drug, and they go as fast as you can walk. They go bip, bip, bip. Or we have Mount Everest type climbers. And honestly, the drug guys were much better. I couldn't believe it. The drug guys blew them away, right? But it's true, the anti-climb panel, they couldn't get around it. They just couldn't. When you didn't have it. So sometimes you sacrifice beauty for efficiency. And we did. So we built this wall, and we built over 500 miles of wall. That's why we had such good numbers. The famous chart that came down, very thankfully, the chart that came down on my right, Governor. Had I not looked over there, I'm not speaking right now. You might be speaking here. You want to know the truth? You, JD, and we've got a lot of great people in this party, but I got very lucky, but we had the best numbers we've ever had. But I bought, what happens is when you fill it up, it's like water. You fill it up. Now we have 571 miles of wall. And they would always say, you know, when we renovated a wall, so there'd be like a piece of plywood sitting there for 60 years, or a 2x4 sitting for 60 years on the ground and rotting because, you know, and they'll say, you didn't build a new wall. Here we're building 50 feet up in the air and 30 feet sections, 50-foot sections, all steel, all concrete, all everything. And all, by the way, they don't even want me to say this, but what the hell, doesn't take that long time. They were all wired for all of the equipment. We put wires in everything so they can easily wire for all the different types of equipment. And if there's a doubt, we have to wire. Whenever we just look, you just find the wires all over the place up top, so we could just hook it up. We don't have to have wires on the outside, which wouldn't do too well, right? So anyway, so we built an extra 200 miles of wall, and the governor wanted to buy it. He tried to buy it, and they wouldn't sell it to him. He wanted to put it up himself. Could have been done in 3 to 4 weeks, 200 more miles, because when you do it now, they just keep going further out, further out, further out, getting around. So we did an extra 200 miles, and it was all bought. And they announced that they're not going to put it up. And that's when I realized they wanted open borders. And that's when I realized that people are going to come pouring through the wall like nobody's ever seen before. But you've seen it. A lot of you are here because of that. I made it my #1 issue. They all said inflation was the #1 issue. I said, I disagree. I think people coming into our country from prisons and from mental institutions is a bigger issue for the people that I know. And I made it my #1. I talked about inflation too, but you know, how many times can you say that an apple has doubled in cost? I'd say it and I'd hit it hard, but then I go back to the fact that we don't want criminals coming into our country. We don't want the jails of every country in the world virtually being deposited into the United States. And that man had to suffer with it. And he did an unbelievable job. I'll tell you, he was a very popular governor, but now he's like an unbeatable governor because of your border policies. He was fantastic. And he really was. So. Governor Abbott, he's a great man, great leader. And, but it did make him very more, did you do it? You didn't do that for politics. You did it because you wanted to do the right thing. But I'll tell you, it sure as hell worked for politics too. It's self-preservation, that's right. But no, because the people are demanding it. The people of Texas are demanding it. The people are demanding it all over. So anyway, so we built it, and they wouldn't let us use it. They wouldn't let the governor use it. And other governors, they wouldn't let him use it. But he was the leader of the pack and did a great job. And then we heard about a month ago that not only wouldn't they let us use it, they were selling it. They were going to sell it for 5 cents on the dollar. Now, 5 cents on the dollar then, but today it would cost more than twice as much to build because we bought it like 6 years ago. And it was just sitting on the ground, and that does not do well for the whole thing. But it was just sitting on the ground, and I heard about it, and I called the governor, and I called a lot of people, your attorney general. And here's the story. They were going to buy it, and these are great business people. They were going to buy it for 5 cents on the dollar or less. And they were calling us up, we'll sell it to you for 200 cents on the dollar. In other words, it will cost you twice as much, so it's 200 cents on the dollar. I said, can somebody explain that to a judge? I mean, how corrupt is that? You'd think they'd say, maybe we'll sell it to you for 20 cents, 30 cents, but not 200 cents. So they were going to buy something for 5 cents, and they were going to sell it to us for a fortune. They were going to make it would be, they'd have it down that in Fortune magazine, they'd put it of the deal of the year, okay? You buy something like that. But it was so corrupt and so horrible. And when we told that to the administration, they didn't care. They just kept going forward. They couldn't care less. And they kept going forward. They knew that they were trying to sell it back to us. They would have sold it back to us. You would have ended up buying it. You would have paid probably 50, 60 cents, who knows? But they were going to use it for scrap metal, but then they made a much better deal. They could just buy it and sell it to us for 15, 20 times what they paid. 20 times, think of it, like 20 times what they paid. And we wouldn't let it happen. And the governor with his attorney general, Ken Paxton, they made a fantastic, they're a good lawyer. He's pushed around pretty good by people, right? I said, you got a great attorney general. They should leave him alone. He was with me. But Ken and the governor went to court, and a judge actually became incensed and actually called for an investigation. How could a thing like this happen? So he stopped it. So we're waiting to put that wall up. And now that you have a new president, that wall will go up so fast. The governor will complain, sir. This is Greg Abbott, sir. Please, the wall is going up too fast. Please don't do that. You know the story about winning. No, we're going to win too much. We're winning too much. Please stop. People always love that one. We'll do this with the wall. Governor Abbott calls, sir, the wall is going up too fast. We can't take it. We just can't take it. No, I think you'll be very happy if the wall goes up too fast, right? But we'll get that done. We'll work with you on that. But it was a great decision by a great Texas judge, right? And it was beautiful, beautiful to watch. We stopped them right on their track. I mean, they were literally loading the stuff onto trucks. It was terrible. Honestly, it was terrible. And he wouldn't take it. So I'm so glad I mentioned that they have a really good governor in Texas. And I swear, I didn't know he was here. I swear to you, it sounds like a setup. I didn't know you would end. Did I get lucky? I said the right thing. Because there have been moments when I wasn't so happy with him, you know? But not too many, I can tell you that. So anyway, it's good to see you too, Governor. Great. But I just want to thank everybody. You've been incredible. I recognize so many of you. It's so crazy. But this has been a long journey. This was a journey that started in 2015, probably started 20 years before that. People used to say, you're going to run for president? You're going to run? And I always said, no, I don't want. And then one day I said, let's give it a shot. And what I talked about then was the border, too. I think it probably was the number one issue for me. Back in 2015, 2016, I talked about the border. And now I talked about the border, but this border is much worse. We fixed the border. It was totally fixed. There was nothing to talk about. 2020, by the way, that election was totally rigged, but that's okay. It was a rigged election. You know the only thing good about it? It showed how bad they are, showed how incompetent. And frankly, historically, this is a much bigger event. If that would have gone like it should have. The bad thing about it is some bad things happen, like a lot of people in our country that wouldn't be in our country right now. So, you know, that's the bad part. But I will say that it started in 2015, and right from the beginning, we went to the top. The day one, they announced Trump, and Trump went to number one and stayed there for the whole primary. And then we took on Hillary. She didn't look too happy today. We took on Hillary. A very nice person, but we took on Hillary and we defeated Hillary, and then we did much better the second time in 2020. You know, we got millions more votes. We got millions, like 10, 12 million more votes than we did the first time. No president has ever gotten that many more votes. I got like 9 million more than anybody else had ever gotten. And they said we lost. And because of that, I said to Melania, what do you think? And she said, you want to do this again? And had we lost, and had I thought we lost, I wouldn't do it again, because that's like the ultimate poll, right? But I knew how well we did. And this time we made it too big to rig. It was so big. They tried like hell in the butt. They tried to do it. And around 9:02, they gave up. Last time they did bad things. At this time, they just said, yes. You know, I don't know if you saw, Mr. Speaker, in Washington, they had placards. They were all set to march. They thought it'd be closer. A gentleman asked me, a very respected gentleman asked me yesterday, how come the polls were so wrong? They showed you winning, but not in a landslide. I said, because people that are true Trumpers are so angry at the whole polling system and at the writers, the fake news, that they don't want to talk to anybody. So when you call somebody from Trump, who are you voting for? They say, it's none of your business. I'm not telling you. And that was probably 40% of the people they called. So they would discard that one, and they didn't show that. And then when the election happened, you know, the vote came, and it was much different, much higher than we're going to win, but they really thought, they couldn't believe it. The one man said, I mean, it was so much higher. We won all 7 swing states. We won the popular vote by millions of votes, which is hard for a Republican. I'll tell you who came through. The unions came through. The auto workers were great. The Teamsters were great. The firemen were great. I think almost every union was great. The only one that weren't great, although Sean was great, and the Teamsters, Sean O'Brien, the head of the Teamsters, was fantastic. But generally speaking, the head of the union was against Trump, but the union would be with us for like 80, 85%. Look what we did with the auto workers in Michigan. Look what we did with the Teamsters. The Teamsters were unbelievable. They were a solid Democrat vote, and they voted for Trump. So we had a great experience. Now we have to go to work and get it done, because we have to do something that's going to be great. We're going to turn our country around, and we're going to turn it around fast. And I think this was a better speech than the one I made upstairs, okay? I think this was better, JD. I think this was much better, and I got to see my friend. So, Governor, take care of yourself. You call me, we'll start working. You know what that means with him. He's going to be calling me tomorrow morning at about 6. And I said, how about next week? You call me and we're going to get it started real fast. We'll really help you a lot. You've done a fantastic job protecting something which it's not supposed to be for the states. And amazing job you've done. Thank you very much. And I want to thank everybody. And I have a First Lady who's been incredible. She's been incredible. I shouldn't say this. I'm going to get hell when I say this, but her feet are absolutely aching. You know, those heels. And we thought we were leaving. We were going home. Sir, would you be able to go down and say hello to some of your other fans that are here? I said, oh, I didn't know that. Wow. Did you get to see pretty clearly the picture, I hope? Good. That's good. But because you wouldn't want to make the same speech again, right? But she said, darling, I love you so much, but my feet are killing me. I said, honey, let me just see how far it is. I asked the person. Oh, not that long, maybe 400 or 500 yards. That's 5 football fields. I said, can you make it? She said, we're going to make it no matter what. We're going to make it because we have to go. Right? Right? And then we went out to the helicopter, though, just prior to this, and said goodbye. And it's a custom, and the wind is blowing like crazy. And with the hat that she's wearing, she almost blew away. We almost lost her. She was being elevated off the ground. She almost blew away. No. So we all appreciate it, because you've been a great First Lady, a beautiful and a great First Lady. And they love our First Lady. You know, JD, whenever I make a speech, I see hundreds of times, we love our First Lady. And they do, and they should. She's great. So I just want to thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to thank everybody. And I felt that I said to JD, should we give him the A treatment, the B treatment, the C, the D, or the F? You know what the F is? Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye. I gave you the A+ treatment. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Governor. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
President Trump completing a remarkable Trump comeback, as I was going to say, and the Trumpian speech, I guess, is what we could call it, without notes, going on to what is the so-called overflow crowd. Let's go to Nancy Cordes in Emancipation Hall. And Nancy, he's back.
Nora, I think that's what Trump calls the weave, an unscripted riff about many of his favorite topics. He talked about his political enemies. He talked about voter ID laws. He talked about the cost of rebar. He talked about various people who he spotted in the room, including the governor of Texas. He said that he was eager to talk about all kinds of things that didn't quite fit into his inaugural address, which he just wrapped up a short time ago, but that he knew the folks in this room would appreciate because they are his hardcore supporters and donors. There were times, Nora, where the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, behind him looked a little bit pained, possibly because he's aware that there is an enormous room full of dignitaries upstairs waiting for Trump before they can tuck into the traditional inaugural luncheon.
Nancy, thank you. Let's bring in our chief Washington correspondent, Major Garrett. Major?
So I think it's worth pointing out, Nora, that there have been rituals today, traditions, scriptures, patriotic songs. But this transition is one done through gritted teeth. With the pardons issued by President Biden just before his presidency ended, he effectively told the country, I believe my family would be criminally prosecuted unfairly by the next president of the United States. And with his remarks just now, President Trump said he still believes those who have either pled guilty to crimes from January 6th or were convicted by jurors are American political hostages. That is the kind of hostility, one administration to another, that is befitting this moment in our history, but is unlike any other in our history.
Well said, Major. Thank you very much. Outside Capitol Hill, and we're looking at some of those dignitaries. I do see Abby Blunt, the wife of Senator Blunt, who is here. And Senator, because you've been on Capitol Hill for so many years previously, as Nancy Cordes pointed out, that Speaker Johnson was sitting there perhaps with gritted teeth, because a lot of people are waiting for this luncheon, and they are way behind schedule.
Well, and not a whole lot, because it's the hardest ticket to get. It's about 200 to 250 people in Statuary Hall. Normally what happens, Nora, is the newly sworn-in president goes to the president's room over off the Senate floor, nominates officially the people he's hoping can get confirmed in the next few days, and then goes to this lunch. And lunch is going to be cold, I would guess.
Yeah, but I do think that that's an important point, because while we're noticing sort of the ceremony of this and the speeches, the work of government begins immediately, and the signing of those documents. And there are many people, of course, talking about right now, we don't have an acting Secretary of Defense. We don't have someone in charge of the FBI, as the FBI director and his deputy have resigned. Concerns about the transition period.
Well, I believe that's right. And the Senate goes into session right around 2 o'clock today. So right around now, for the specific purpose of seeing if they can't move some of these along quickly. I think it was mentioned earlier this morning that maybe the CIA Director Ratcliffe and the Secretary of State would be among those that might even be confirmed today. And of course, that answers every question about who's in charge. The more of that you could get done, which is why the Senate's in session today as opposed to in the morning.
And that notably, right out of the gate, 2 expected to be with Democratic support. And that may be a rarity for some of Mr. Trump's picks. He doesn't need Democrats because he has the Senate majority of 53 seats. He doesn't need Democrats to confirm his picks. But to have right out of the gate, soon-to-be Secretary of State Marco Rubio, a senator expected to be swiftly confirmed, and John Ratcliffe, who had previously served.
Former House member and previously served as the Director of National Intelligence.
So 2 key national security people on the job relatively soon, it is expected, but we may be waiting. There are still ongoing FBI background checks, Nora, for a number of these picks, including, as CBS just confirmed, the man to run the FBI, Kash Patel. The FBI hasn't finished looking into the man who might run the FBI quite yet. The same with the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Her background check's still ongoing, and it may be a while before we see that.
Mm-hmm. And Gail, it was interesting to just hear President Trump address what he called his closest supporters. Most of them were governors there in the room that didn't make it into the main rotunda. But this was vintage Donald Trump, and including what he said, things that they told him not to say in his inaugural address. So he said he would leave it to them. He talked about the January 6th, quote unquote, hostages, he calls them. These are the people who've been tried in a court of law and are now in jail, that he plans to pardon some of them. And there was a lot more.
I thought it was good, though, that he went down to greet his supporters, because of the weather conditions, you couldn't be in the main room. The fact that he took the time to go, but again, it turned into, I thought, just another grievance after another. Sometimes I feel like he talks in a stream of consciousness. And I think now people want to hear, okay, let's get started. What are we going to do now? Because he's got the country. He's got the country, and everybody is ready to go and stand behind him. And I think when it continues to just be one grievance after another, I think at times that just feels exhausting. I like in his inauguration speech, he said, never believe something is impossible to do. In America, impossible is what we do. And I think that is such a strong message to send. What are you thinking, Bob?
This is a president who is returning to Washington. Yes, he has concerns and grievances about the past. But in my conversations with him, before the election and after the election and over the weekend, it's so evident to me that what's coming is fast action, that Washington is bracing for a disruptive presidency, but in a different manner than what we saw in 2017, where he was still trying to get a grip of how to run a White House, who to put around him. You see, the Republican Party now is totally in thrall to President Trump. They are with him. And you see this also out in the country, in the state legislatures. This is a moment of Republican power. And
why does he keep going back to past history then?
That is who he is. He lingers on the past, but he has now put in place an administration that's going to ramp up in the coming hours all of this action on immigration, executive agency policy, and rolling back Biden-era regulations.
Well, you said fast action. The executive orders will be signed today.
And
so we
you could even see some
today.
confirmations, as Senator Blunt said as well.
Just let everyone know, you are looking at now what is this luncheon, inaugural luncheon for the new president there. And you can see a number of the dignitaries. There is Barron Trump speaking with
Doug Burgum.
Governor Burgum, who is going to be the new Secretary of Energy. And
Interior.
Excuse me, Interior. Thank you very much. And there are a number of the Trump family members there speaking with Senator Rubio, who is going to be the Secretary of State.
Yeah. Senator, they don't look like they're rushing to their plates. They're still standing around.
And there's Clarence Thomas.
Clarence Thomas.
Speaking with Vivek Ramaswamy and Ivanka. And I did just spot Senator Tom Cotton, the Republican from Arkansas, the incoming Senate Intel chair, who was looking at his watch. I'm sure Senator Blunt just reminded us, too, that the Senate is supposed to get started with their business at 2 o'clock today in the business of government, because there are a number of these agencies where the political appointees have left. They're gone, and the new people need to be signed into office. And
one thing to watch really quickly, Nora, is the Trump family and its finances. So many Democrats have been texting me and calling me in the last 24 hours, paying close attention to how President Trump and his family have put in motion certain business enterprises related to cryptocurrency and that whole financial investment space in recent days. But they don't have any control in the Senate or the House, so scrutiny will sometimes not be met with a subpoena, like it would happen if they had control of the House or the Senate. But you do hear this refrain now from Democrats that the Trump family's business interest is something they at least want to spotlight, even if they can't formally investigate it.
There's an interesting pairing. Justice Elena Kagan.
And McConnell, Senator McConnell is, as Senator Blunt knows him too well and knows so well, to the nominations. He's now an independent voice, and they're not really sure where he's going to land on Tulsi Gabbard, the Director for National Intelligence nominee, or when it comes to even Pete Hegseth, the nominee for the Pentagon.
Let me ask you about that, Senator Blunt, because in my conversations with people, too, Senator Thune, incredible now, Senate Majority Leader, and they said, yeah, but Mitch McConnell is still pretty much one of the most powerful people in the United States Senate, and he will be in charge of the Senate Defense Appropriations, which is a key post. Explain why that's important.
Well, he's powerful, but he's also untethered, which
Yes.
for 18 years, Mitch McConnell's had to worry about everything he said and how it might affect every other Republican. I think we're going to see him take a strong position on national defense, on our leadership in the world and the importance of that. And these intelligence and foreign policy confirmations will matter to him a lot.
He's already indicated that the Health and Human Services Secretary nominee matters to him a lot. He's put out a statement. He left RFK Jr.'s name out of it, but said anyone who wants this post better be very clear and distance themselves from anyone who is actively seeking to restrict or remove the polio vaccine from circulation, which is someone who worked very closely with RFK Jr., there was well-documented evidence of a campaign to do so. And of course, Mitch McConnell, having been a polio survivor himself.
Had polio, was just old enough to have polio before Dr. Salk found the way to cure polio, and still has some after effects of polio.
Another remarkable.
Clearly a pro-vaccine guy.
It seems if you go against Donald Trump, you do so at your own peril.
Well,
don't you?
McConnell has much peril.
You don't think he's worried about it? You don't think so?
He's no.
Or I think you just caught what I caught.
Yes, just remarkable to see Ashley Kavanaugh and Justice Kavanaugh having a conversation with Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan. And the reason that's noteworthy is because there will likely be a number of antitrust matters and more, including issues about social media that come before the Supreme Court. And this is what happens in the cozy corridors of power, or in this case, Statuary Hall of the United States Senate, where business leaders have the rare opportunity to have a conversation in a social way with the people that regulate them.
Well, Senator, you said earlier in the day that it's all about relationships. This is what we're seeing now, building relationships.
The Senate is particularly relationship driven because under the rules of the Senate, to get almost anything done, you have to have somebody from the other side work with you to get things done. And over time, that really builds up linkages that don't go away.
How much, Senator, do you think that Donald Trump will change, or how do you think he'll deal with the Senate? Would he do any actual outreach of the old kind that we used to talk about to the other party or any of that stuff, or actually less of it because he's been reelected and he's got his own plans?
You know, Donald Trump's actually pretty approachable. And one of the interesting things I think about President Trump is he will respond to you almost exactly the way you approach him. I'm sure he had a great conversation with Senator Fetterman, who went to see him in Mar-a-Lago. Even that first long press conference he's already had, that was a relationship where it wasn't adversarial, but the press got a lot of information. So I think he'll maintain that. And also, I've been fortunate to be in the room with several presidents. Donald Trump was the only president I was ever with who would let you say whatever you wanted to say. Now, he would talk twice as much as everybody else in the room, but he was also never in a hurry. There was never a staffer one single time that said, Mr. President, you've got to go to the next event. Never rushed, wanted to listen, wanted to be absolutely sure you understood his position, but was following that conversation. He was engaged in a way that's pretty hard to find.
Nora, we're looking at Pete Hegseth, the pick to become the next Secretary of Defense, talking to Roger Wicker, the senator who chairs the committee that will, as we understand it, meet later today to discuss Hegseth's confirmation and see if they move that forward. Earlier, there was also a chat I spotted there between Lisa Murkowski and Senator Barrasso. Senator Murkowski is going to be one of those really interesting people to watch in terms of whether she votes with the majority of Republicans or take some stance on some of these nominees that she's been clear. She has felt, she said, there was a clear message being sent by the Trump team that you better get in line. And if you don't, you will be primaried, meaning another Republican will try to take you out.
Are you curious to see what Susan Collins does as well?
Absolutely. The women in the Senate are going to be very interesting to watch.
It's interesting to watch the change of Joni Ernst, who seemed in the beginning to be quite skeptical of Pete Hegseth, but she's had a couple of meetings and now seems to have changed her opinion or tune about how she's going to vote on him. True?
Well, she had said she wanted to see the FBI vetting in relation to that allegation of sexual assault against him. But it does not, I think we never got a clear answer. Perhaps you know, Senator, whether any of that FBI briefing on Hegseth was shared beyond the ranking and chair of the Senate Armed Services. So I don't know if she got her questions answered, but in that hearing, she seemed to be on board with Pete Hegseth.
Well, I don't think it's clear either that the FBI report on Pete Hegseth included any information about that 2017. And it is important to remember, too, as Margaret and I have done some conversations about this as well, is that the FBI report is done at the behest of the client. And the client in this case actually happens to be the president-elect in that case. So it was compiled for the president-elect, not necessarily for the senator. So while we call it an investigation or a report, it's not traditionally that. It's not an exhaustive report of someone's entire background. And so we wouldn't expect that, but it goes through some sort of the basics on those things. I do want to bring in historian Douglas Brinkley. And Douglas, I know as you're watching this, I'm curious your thoughts about this moment in history.
Well, you know, I think Robert Costa rightfully pointed out in Trump's first inaugural, he didn't really own the Republican Party. Trump was seen as this populist outsider. All the old George W. Bush crowd really didn't even want to be seen with Trump much. And then his first inaugural, Trump had this massive resistance movement. We're not even talking about that women's march. It's the largest protest march in U.S. history in 2017 with women in pink demanding culpability for Trump's misogyny. And now look at it right now. He owns the Republican Party. He's now defeated the two historic women nominees for president, Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris. And you're just having a kind of demoralization of women because, Cecile Richards of Planned Parenthood died just hours before the inaugural today. She'd gone, and that was Kamala Harris's big issue, was women's reproductive health. The idea that the Republicans in the Supreme Court have worked to scrap Roe v. Wade. It's a very odd moment in U.S. women's history, how the demoralization that's come to them at the hands of Donald Trump, while at the same time some women and the conservative movement, a couple like Joni Ernst, they are rising, but that what we consider the movement of women is they're in a bad place right now.
I want to bring in Weijia Jiang, who is at the White House. And Weijia, we are waiting to have the president do some of the signing of these executive orders, but I know you have a recap for us of what Joe Biden said was he was departing Joint Base Andrews.
No, that's right. When he went to Joint Base Andrews, there was a big crowd waiting for him, a mix of prominent Democrats and staffers and supporters and friends. And he said, what I want you to take away from this farewell message today is that we still have a lot of work to do. He chuckled. He mentioned President Trump's inaugural address, and he said, as an example, that shows how much work we have to do. And that was President Trump's formal address, not even the impromptu one that we heard just a short time ago when he went down the list of all the things he wanted to talk about, but he said he practiced restraint and did not talk about. And so that is Joe Biden's last message to all of those who have stood by his side, that there is still a lot ahead for this country. Nora?
Weijia, thank you. Let's go now to President.
And well, okay. The next one will be, excuse me. The next one will be 47 sub-cabinet level appointments, sir.
You can hear the president there getting instruction about what he's signing. There were 22 cabinet appointments there. This is the 47 sub-cabinet appointments. And you can see the Sharpie is back. And what looks like the EKG signature of Donald Trump.
Now 31 acting designations and appointments that effectively take control of the government.
31 acting designations and appointments.
That's important. And we have 15 commission chairman and acting chairman appointments.
15 chairman and acting chairman appointments. Yet to find out whether one of them is for the Pentagon and the acting Secretary of Defense. But Senator,
well, these were more the FCC, good counsel, those nominations.
Thank you, sir. Lastly, we have a proclamation ordering on all future inauguration days, including this inauguration day, that flags shall be flown at full mast. Very important.
I was at Jimmy Carter's memorial service. I think he'd appreciate the fact that the day you're inaugurated president, the flag should be flying at full mast. I think they go back down tomorrow.
Something to think about.
Thank you. Good acoustics. Yes.
All right. Now, thank you. You go to the pledge.
Great. Very
good.
and there you hear Senator Klobuchar trying to move it along, saying it's time to get to lunch and keep everything on schedule, handing out the Sharpies as commemorative pens to everyone.
Mr. President, Patriot goes back as long as helicopters. Before that, it was a stagecoach. But it was, I thought it was beautiful. Thank you. Great job. Great job. Thank you. Check.
Mr. President, do you have any reaction to the pardons President Biden did at the last minute?
Well, I'm not going to discuss it now. I think it was unfortunate that he did that. We won't discuss it now. There's plenty of time to discuss.
Thank you very much, guys.
Should we go to lunch? Very much. Okay.
Head to lunch.
Ready for lunch? Okay.
And there you see President Trump declining to comment further on the fact that President Biden pardoned members of his own family, other than saying it was unfortunate. And then moving toward, I think he's just getting a briefing on what exactly he signed. But so what that means essentially is we're going to be seeing the executive orders, I think, signed at Capital One Arena in front of his supporters and the estimated 20,000 people that have packed in there. And I am told that the interim Secretary of Defense has been named. They will perform the duties of Secretary of Defense until Hegseth is confirmed or someone is confirmed as the Pentagon chief. It's a man by the name of Robert Salas. He's currently the Deputy Director for the Washington Headquarters Service, a name that is unfamiliar to me, but there is someone in that position at this hour. And back now to Statuary Hall, where everyone is seated and waiting for the president to join them. And Senator Blunt, I see the wine is being poured as it's now approaching middle to late afternoon, I guess you could say,
Closer
right?
to 5 all the time.
It was supposed to start at 1:30, so it's not so bad. But you had pointed out that this was an exclusive lunch, only 200 people. How was it decided who gets to go to this particular lunch?
Well, about 40 tickets are given to the president, to the president's group to use however they want to, and the rest are generally members of Congress or past presidents or past chairman of the inauguration or other things like that. But it's really a hard to get ticket, and everybody that's there is glad to be there.
And there's a special luncheon menu, right,
Yes,
Gail, for them?
I actually have it.
Yes, including.
Here you go. Chesapeake crab cakes, Greater Omaha Angus rib steak, Thumbelina carrots, not sure what that is, broccoli rabe and potato gratin. And dessert, you'll be happy to know, is an apple icebox terrine with sour cream ice cream. And I do love a good salted caramel.
But we should note that that apple icebox dessert is from Minnesota. It's Minnesota apples.
Minnesota, exactly.
And the ribeye steak is Angus from Omaha, which is where Deb Fisher is from. And I'll leave it to Senator Blunt to fill this in. But Senator Fisher and her husband own a ranch in the Sandhills where some of the best beef in the whole country is from.
I'm sure that's right, and I'm sure that even if you'd gotten that beef and she hadn't been involved, it might not have said Omaha beef, but this one did say the menu did say Omaha beef.
Well, I did just happen to see Senator Fisher recently, so she was telling me about, yes.
But are Minnesota apples different? You pointed out, are they different than other apples?
Senator Klobuchar tells me they're much better.
Yes. No, I know that. But I mean, do Minnesota apples have a different taste? Other than it's just from the state where Amy Klobuchar is from.
I think the answer is no, but Senator Klobuchar might try to convince you differently.
Well, and we still have the great national question of where the Thumbelina carrots originate from.
We've gotten to that point in
the national
question.
Exactly.
There's a number of serious things to discuss certainly this afternoon, and that has to do with what this new Trump White House will look like and what they're planning to do. And Robert Costa, I know you've spoken with the president over the weekend. What did Donald Trump say he wants to do in this opening week?
He is going to move quickly to use his executive power, but also start to engage with Congress to get a major package together that will couple his proposal on border policy and immigration with what he wants to do on tax policy. There are a few snags on the horizon. President Trump has said to me and others he wants to get rid of the debt limit, the nation's borrowing limit, or extend it for 2 years or 4 years if possible. Some conservatives in the House of Representatives don't love that idea. So how this is all going to play out legislatively is still very much something that's open to negotiation But President Trump is also telling people behind the scenes, Nora, that he's very eager to get working on deals, whether it's addressing TikTok and how U.S. ownership could be part of that company, or when it comes to Russia's war with Ukraine. He wants to be immediately on the phone with world leaders, coming up with diplomatic proposals and legislative proposals, all while the executive branch really kicks into action.
We've also learned that President Trump plans to visit California on Friday.
He will visit there.
That's going to be a very interesting trip, considering how hard that he's hit Gavin Newsom and Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass. What do you expect of that trip?
Gavin Newsom is perhaps arguably one of the biggest stars in the Democratic Party right now, widely considered a possible presidential contender in 2028. And you saw President Trump in his inaugural address take real shots at how California has handled the wildfires. So whether they can come to a bipartisan consensus on the federal support for California, that will be something that we'll be closely watching.
And we can see a number of the tech CEOs and tech titans have decided to stick around for lunch. And again, there you have Apple's Tim Cook sitting right next to Donald Trump Jr. and Justice Alito at that prime table. And as Senator Blunt said, this is one of the hottest tickets in town because it's not many people, just about 200 people. The inaugural balls, they're packed with a lot of folks, but this is the exclusive spot you want to be.
And sorry, go ahead, John.
Well, Tim Cook is an interesting character in terms of the CEOs from the tech companies. He was one of the ones. I mean, culturally, he is. Has quite different views than Donald Trump, but he was one of the first to learn to work with him, particularly on the tariff question. A lot of component parts of Apple products would have been hit by the tariff. He got exemptions for Apple by working with Donald Trump. And according to the Wall Street Journal reporting, part of that work included going to Texas with Trump and saying, we're doing more business in the United States and creating an event to glorify Donald Trump. I think that might be a good rule book for the rest of the tech CEOs who are there in that same spirit. But Tim Cook was an innovator in that area.
One of the first members of the president's cabinet that will likely be confirmed is Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who got a warm reception, I would say, in his Senate confirmation hearings from Democrats who've worked with him, senators who've worked with him and praised him not only for his knowledge, but also his graciousness. And you can see he is seated right next to Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez, as well as his wife and the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, all at that very important table.
And Barron Trump was at that table,
That's
too.
right. Thank you for reminding me. And Melania's father at that as well. And
I'd say that's a good seat. No.
I would too.
Yeah.
I would too, Gail. I wouldn't turn it down. And Senator Blunt, is it customary that we hear from the new president at the luncheon?
I think the president's going to give his third speech of the last few hours here before long. He'll respond to a toast from either the majority leader or Senator Klobuchar, or maybe both. And also on that high-tech topic, obviously, a lot of the high-tech investment in China has been pretty major, and trying to figure out, one, explain how that benefits the final product, and two, how the profits generally come back here are the kinds of things that those CEOs are explaining to the president and anybody else who will listen.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if they follow through with Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, has vowed to repeal the CHIPS Act, which was a bipartisan act that poured money into bringing those the production of some of those computer chips back to the United States, into states like Arizona and the like. Another thing, and I know, Nora, as reporters, we look at this room and say there are a million stories here you could be overhearing at each table. I wonder what that conversation between Alito and the CEO of Apple is about, given the Supreme Court decision on TikTok. Apple, one of those platforms that makes the app available and would have faced stiff financial fines for making it continuously available after the 19th. Senator Tom Cotton, reminding them of that quite loudly. Don't test us here on that law that Donald Trump is about to test.
Oh, Margaret, that's a really good point.
And Pete Hegseth, sitting right next to Justice Clarence Thomas and his wife.
Please welcome members of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Speaker of the House, the Honorable Mike Johnson, accompanied by Mrs. Johnson, Senate Democratic Leader, the Honorable Charles Schumer, accompanied by Mrs. Weinschall Schumer. House Majority Leader, the Honorable Steve Scalise, accompanied by Mrs. Scalise. And House Democratic Leader, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries.
Did you hear Chuck Schumer's wife's name?
And then we just heard from the Speaker of
Please
the
remain
House.
standing for the honors and the invocation.
Let's listen in now for the invocation.
Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the Vice President of the United States, ranking member of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Deb Fischer and Mr. Fischer. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President of the United States, the Honorable J.D. Vance, accompanied by Mrs. Vance. Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the President of the United States, the Chairwoman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Amy Klobuchar and Mr. Bessler. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, the Honorable Donald John Trump and Mrs. Trump.
I have a feeling people are very hungry, so I'm going to get this started. Mr. President and Madam First Lady, Mr. Vice President and Madam Second Lady, my colleague Senator Fischer, distinguished guests including the Speaker, Leader Jeffries, and Senate Leaders Thune and Schumer, on behalf of the United States Congress, welcome to the 60th inaugural lunch. Big surprise, we are featuring Nebraska beef and Minnesota apples for dessert. We are here in Statuary Hall, where these luncheons have taken place since President Reagan's first inauguration in 1981, and where the House of Representatives once met over 150 years ago. That would be before you were born, Mr. Speaker. In 1864, after the new House wing of the Capitol was built, and in the midst of the Civil War, Congress dedicated this chamber to host statues chosen by every state. Walking into the hall, we all passed under the arch, holding the marble Car of History clock. The statue shows Cleo, the Greek muse of history, holding a book to record events as they happen. And as you can see, she's heard a lot of stuff. And as she rides her chariot forward into the future, she looks behind her to remember the past. She remains here as she has for hundreds of years, a reminder that history will remember the events of the present, and it is on us to write that history right now. Speaking of art, the painting right here before you, I chose this painting for this lunch this summer, and it's titled American Horizon. It's by Jane Wilson, who grew up on her family farm in Seymour, Iowa. Coming from the middle of our country, Senator Fisher and I both like the painting because the artist is from America's heartland, but the horizon could easily be Florida, Mr. President. I will also note that this is the first time in history we are featuring the work of a woman artist at this lunch, and we thank the Art Institute of Chicago for their assistance. Looking at the vast open landscape of this painting, we're drawn to the bottom of the frame where the land or the water, depending on where you're from, meets the sky, and the horizon endures. The enduring horizon is especially meaningful for us today as we mark our enduring democracy as we approach its 250th anniversary. It's a reminder that what's over the horizon is our next chapter. And it is my prayer that the people in this room can write that chapter together. I'd now like to ask U.S. Senate Chaplain Dr. Barry Black, and we thank God he is back with us and in good health, to deliver the invocation, after which lunch will be served. Thank you.
Let us pray. King of kings and Lord of lords, whose kingdom is above all earthly kingdoms, and who judges all lesser sovereignties, look with favor upon President Donald John Trump and Vice President James David Vance. Empower them with the wisdom and courage needed for our times. Protect them from the vicissitudes and challenges that obstruct the making of a world of justice, peace, and righteousness. Lord, give them a deep desire to do their best for our country and world, and a determination to act in ways pleasing to you. Preserve their families in health and strength by your grace and power. Bless now this luncheon as each of us finds your grace sufficient for every need. We pray in your sovereign name. Amen.
And thus begins the long-awaited Senate luncheon, which has been slightly delayed in part because of the number of extra speeches and more. But for some of you, your local news is next. For others, we're going to be right back with continuing coverage of the inauguration of Donald Trump.
This is a classic got up too fast from tying your shoes back injury, not to be confused with the you threw your back out sneezing back injury. Lucky for you, an Amazon One medical provider can help. And if it comes down to needing meds, Amazon Pharmacy will deliver them to your door. Of course, you have to get to the door.
I told myself I was okay with my moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis symptoms.
With my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. But just okay isn't okay.
And I was done settling.
If you still have symptoms after trying a TNF blocker like Humira,
I don't know where the hell this commercial come from. Well, I guess it's official now. They finna eat their food and talk about some other shit and we'll see where we go from here. Who knows, man? I don't know. I don't really care either, but I don't know shit.
Risk increases in age 50 plus with a heart disease risk factor. Tell your.
What y'all think? Can y'all hear me? What y'all think gonna happen now? Business as usual? Is anything gonna change? Energetically, things may have shifted.
A quick question. Where will you be watching the NFL playoffs on CBS?
It's not. Follow-up question. When every unforgettable moment unfolds streaming live on Paramount Plus, will there be any salty snacks?
It's not that kind of watch group.
It is now. We made shirts.
and fixed up the sign.
Let's go. Much better. Can we focus, please?
Playoffs, baby. Playoffs.
It's not.
Read the room, bro.
Be Merry, the food issue, Sunday morning.
Stream live inauguration coverage on CBS News 24/7. Join the CBS News political team for expert analysis on what this transition of power means to the issues impacting Americans most when the former president becomes the next president. All-day streaming coverage today on CBS News 24/7.
For continuing coverage of the Southern California wildfires, stay with CBS News and streaming on CBS News 24/7 and Paramount Plus.
This is CBS.
All right, y'all. That's it then, I guess. I'm going to come back later on in a little bit. I'm finna eat. I'm going to come back on my phone, on my mobile, because I get more traffic that way. Thank y'all for attending this inauguration watch party. Enjoy the rest of y'all day.